Hi there, this video is sponsored by Shippin6, a like-minded crew of PLC software engineers who are bringing modern practices to automation. More on that later.
When making a fresh install of the TwinCAT XE, you can either choose to install the TCXE shell as the IDE or use an existing Visual Studio installation. With this installation, you get the default settings for TwinCAT. Whenever I install TwinCAT on a new machine, there are a couple of settings that I always change. In this video, I'll go through 5 of these settings, the rationale for why I changed them, and how you can change them. I'll go through file settings, end-of-line markers, write options, minimize ID changes, write product version in files. Enough talk, let's get started. Hey everyone, now it's time for the practical part of this video. So we're gonna go through the 5 settings that I just talked about. So it's the settings they're called file settings, end-of-line markers, write options, minimize ID changes, and write product version in files. Those are the 5 settings we're gonna go through, and we will start with file settings. Before we get started, I just want to mention that I have created a completely fresh and new Windows 10 virtual machine with a completely fresh installation of TwinCAT 3. So the latest version here, 4024.54. So this is a perfect starting point for going through the settings. So let's now start. The first setting is in Tools, Options. Then you go to TwinCAT, XE environment, and then file settings. And we're supposed to set all of this to true. But before I do that, I'm going to show you what the actual problem is. If we add a couple of IOs, if I add an gitignore master here, and I add a couple of a bus coupler, for example, and a couple of slices to them, so an EL 1008 or an EL maybe EL 2008, EL whatever 6751. That's a CanOpen master. We have a couple of slices here. What TwinCAT does now default is that it stores all of this information in a file, and we can see that if we go to the project and we look at the diff now, what has happened to the project. I should mention that I have this project under version control. So before I did this change, I committed all the changes. And as usual, you should always version control all your projects. My demos here are no different. The nice thing here is that we can actually check what TwinCAT did. So I'm just going to show you which files have changed. And we have one file here, TwinCAT settings tsploy. So this is the TwinCAT solution project. If you go in here now, then we'll see that the settings we added, all these IO devices, are now in this file. So here we have the gitignore master, here we have the bus coupler, and inside the bus coupler we have the, let's see here, the EL 2008, the EL 1008 should be somewhere here. There we go. And, you know, TwinCAT stores all of this in just one file. And this obviously is not a very nice solution because, you know, if you change one of these or you add another IO, you know, it's a lot of information in just one file, and it's quite hard. Then you have to look exactly where in this file this has changed. And there is just a much better option to this. The better option is to go to Tools, Options, TwinCAT, XE environment, file settings, and just set all of this to true. What happens then is that for all of these objects of this type, so IO boxes, which I just showed you, but also IO devices, gitignore boxes, NC access, and all of these things, so also for motion control, it's going to create a separate file instead of storing all of this data in the TwinCAT solution project. So instead of storing it in this TwinCAT settings project. And this is what we want, because then all of these files are gonna be, for every time you add a new IO box, it's gonna create a new file for it. And then that's much easier to manage, because you get this atomic element. And when you change that file, when you change that IO box, you're only gonna get a change in that file. And you know, in version control, when you do diffs, or if you do, you know, code reviews, or you're gonna see what has changed, it's much easier to track changes like these than having a file that's 100,000 lines of code with everything. So for the purpose of version control, this is gold. And if anyone from Beckhoff is watching this video, from anyone from the TwinCAT product management, I think this should be the default setting. So I assume that the default setting is false because historically very few used version control, so maybe it wasn't that important then, but nowadays everyone is using version control, so I think this is what the default settings should be. And actually for that matter, all of the other settings I'm gonna talk about today, it's the same. I think the settings I'm proposing today should be the default settings in TwinCAT. So Beckhoff, please change that. Okay, so what has happened now? So far, nothing, because this configuration is already set there. So we still have this tsproi file with all of these settings, with all of these devices. What we have to do is to make sure that these are saved in separate files, and we can apply that afterwards. So first of all, if I just add a new device now, so if I add on EL another 2008, then we'll see if I save, we'll see that that has automatically created a new file. So it creates this folder config and our IO devices, and we get this nice tree structure with our ETCAT master, our bus coupler, so our EK1100, and the EL2008. But so once this setting is changed, this will only apply for all new objects, and that's why I encourage you to just apply this setting as soon as you have installed TwinCAT. Unfortunately, this setting is not stored in the project or anything. This setting is stored in your development environment. So if you have a new development environment, whether that's a new laptop, a new PC, then you're gonna have to change the settings there as well. So this is nice. We get this, and we can see, and this file only has to do with the EL2008. There's nothing else in this file. Now, how do we change if we already have a project like we have here now, for example, where we let's say we forgot to change this? How do we set this afterwards? What we do is that we can right click here, or right click on any of this object, and we can select independent project file. So that's the actual setting that is set when you have the setting. So the independent project file is going to be the default when you have the setting set that I just showed you. So if you want to do it afterwards, we click here and we do it on all the objects. Independent, 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 independent. This one is already independent, you see. So we save, and now we refresh here, and now we see that the commit history, the version control says that now we have an ETCAT master. The only thing the ETCAT master does is that it references the bus coupler. Then we have the bus coupler. The only thing the bus coupler does is that it references the different Beckhoff slices, so the ETCAT slaves. And then every ETCAT slave has the respective information of it, but they're all separate files. So that's the first setting. Before we go on to the second setting, end of line markers, there is one thing I forgot. It's not part of this list of 5. It's the obvious thing that I should set this to dark mode, and I just felt that the universe was telling me something. I could feel the universe just telling me. I could hear a whispering here in my ear and telling me, Jacob, you need to enable dark mode. And I just felt it. There was something wrong. I just felt something was missing. And yeah, so this should be dark. So yeah, now let's continue with the second setting. The second setting is available in Tools, Options, TwinCAT, XAE, or maybe PLC. Let's see here. I always forget it. Text Editor, text area, end of line markers. I'm gonna show this. What it is that it adds a tiny mini dot in the end of every line. I like this because I often see code like this when people do something like if banana then banana then, and blah 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 something, and blah blah blah, and then things like this pop up. Or okay, actually let's do another setting. This is also not going to be part of this 5. This pops up all the time. It's annoying the hell out of me. We go back here, we go to smart coding, and remove this one, then you don't get this annoying pop-up that shows up. The thing is, I see a lot of, you know, tabs popping up everywhere in the code, and maybe this is probably just me with my OCD, but I just don't like when things like this pop up, and, you know, I just like it to remove all the hidden tabs and all the hidden spaces. If you have an end of line marker, then you see where there is an additional unnecessary spaces or tabs. So you can just get rid of that and, you know, make everything much cleaner. So I like that. This is probably the least important thing I'll go through with you today, but, you know, I wanted to put in a little bit of personal preference here as well, and not objective truth.
A few words from today's sponsor.
Ship-in-6 is a team of software engineers who come from a wide variety of backgrounds, and our mission is to revolutionize automation in the industrial world and beyond.
Our product, our offering, is a 6-week sprint with a customer on a project that they have.
Ship-in-6 is a part of Loop that almost nobody has heard of. It's also the biggest and the fastest growing part of our company. We'd love to work with you on some sprints.
Okay, the next setting is write options, and it's available here in Tools Options, TwinCAT, PLC Environment, write options. Set this separate line IDs to true. So what is this? Before I set it, I'm gonna show you how this file that we just created now, this main program, looks like. If you go to main here, so if you just commit and look at the main, then you're gonna see that TwinCAT adds this extremely annoying line IDs here, and you kind of can wonder, what is this used for? And my understanding is that it's used for when you do online logins, then TwinCAT needs this information. When you do an online login or an online change or alike, during this time TwinCAT needs it. This is my understanding. And if anyone has a better understanding than me, you're of course welcome to write a comment below. But it is extremely annoying because as soon as you add a line or you do any changes, you add a method to your function blocks, because this is everywhere. I mean, it's in all POUs, wherever it's in you know, function block, or whether it's a function. If you mess around with your functions or your function blocks, you add a method, these line IDs are just gonna pop up, and for no apparent reason. It's like, the problem is obviously when you do version control, because when you do version control, then, you know, when I do code reviews or when I just work for myself even, I always think, yeah, what has changed here? I mean, a line ID has been added, and what's that? What's that good for? It's really messy, and this should not be part of the source code. And that's when you have this possibility to set separate line IDs. If you set this to true, what happens then is that all of the line IDs from all the files are written into one file, which is called lineids.dbg. So then TwinCAT has the information it needs to do these online logins and online changes and everything. So that information, so no functionality will be lost, but you'll avoid to get this file into your version control, so you don't have to manage it. So, I mean, the line IDs, you don't have to manage the line IDs. First of all, they're gonna disappear, but more importantly is that if we set this to true, what TwinCAT does then is that it's gonna create, let's see, okay, I think we have to save the project, so I'm just gonna save. And we should get a line ID somewhere here. Or let's just create a new function block. FB test, save, somewhere here. Let's see here. There we go. We get on lineids.dbg. Now, the nice thing with this is that when this file is created, we only need it here now. When we compile the project, we save it and we go to an online login, but we don't have to version control it. So I recommend you to put this file into your gitignore. So if you don't have a gitignore, I will put a link below to the default gitignore that I recommend for everyone to use. But you can skip this. So none of this information with line ID and stuff needs to go into version control. One thing I should mention while talking about this is that any existing files that are using line IDs, like main, they will still have this. So you need to resave those files. So what I mean is that here, if you look at our main program, it still has the line IDs, see? While our, let's see where the test does not have that, because we added the FB test POU after we did this setting. What we need to do is that we just simply have to go to main and we just need to resave it. So save it like this, then TwinCAT is gonna remove that. But again, so then you don't have any line IDs here anymore. Again, this is not a problem if you just make sure to enable this setting default as soon as you have installed TwinCAT. It's just a problem if you have a lot of files already and you haven't had this setting, because then all of these files are gonna be, filled with this information that you just want to get rid of. So that was my third setting. The next setting is minimize ID changes in TwinCAT files, and that is available here in properties for the PLC project. And then you have something here, general, minimize ID changes in TwinCAT files. What does this do? If you look at some TwinCAT files, so if you look at our FB test that we just created, we have something called an ID here. And this can sometimes, for weird and not always very apparent reasons, randomly change, which, if you save something in a method or something, I actually have no idea when it changes, but it kind of feels like this ID is just randomly changed at different occasions. I looked it up at the documentation, and the documentation says the GUIDs of the PLC objects, so that POU, in other words POUs, are linked to those of the PLC project using XOR, okay? This avoids changes to the GUIDs of the PLC objects if they are used several times in different projects. Not super clear, to be honest, what this means. And however, I always set this to minimize ID changes in TwinCAT files. It's gonna reload the project, and then it's just much less likely that those IDs are randomly changed when you do changes to the function block or methods of the function block or anything. I mean, because this applies to everything, it's not just the function block, it's all POU related stuff. If we add a method to one of these function blocks, for example, so I add a method and I call it banana. For some reason I feel like bananas today. I've been load changes, then the banana has this ID as well, and we don't want that to change because again it just messes up the version control system for us. The nice thing with this setting is, however, that this setting is actually not something that is part of your installation. This setting is something that's part of the project. That means that if any developer does this setting once on the project, it's permanent and it's fixed there. So this is not something you do on your installation, it is something you do in the PLC project. Okay, and then we have the last setting, write product version in files. If you go to TwinCAT, you'll notice that for any POUs, you'll have this product version in them. If you, for example, look at our FB test, then TwinCAT adds this product version here, 314024.12. And this is quite annoying because it again messes up our version control system. I noticed that if you open TwinCAT with, let's say you have a newer version of TwinCAT installed and you open this file and you do some change and you save it, then TwinCAT can change this to another version here, maybe the version that you happen to have installed right now. And I tried to figure out, why is this necessary? Is this necessary for anything? Is it used for anything? I mean, the management of which version of TwinCAT you have should be managed by the traditional ways. So that is, by pinning, by placeholding for your libraries, and, for the specific thing of TwinCAT version, it should be done by pinning. So I anyway already know which version of TwinCAT I have. I looked a little bit into the documentation, and it says, here where they talk about the setting that we're going to look at, and they say that, this setting can be used to include the file version in the file for debugging or tracking purposes. So not super clear exactly why. Tracking purposes, I assume, is just, for tracking which version you're using. But then I think this is completely useless. Because if this is the reason, then it doesn't even work. Because here it says product version 314024.12. I don't even have that version on my computer. I only have 4024.54. So what is this? It doesn't even use the right number. What does this mean? So I think this is just completely useless, and we should get rid of this information from all files. So again, this is not just, the function blocks, but we can look at the, I think it's also the programs. Yeah, there we go. We have it in the programs, and it just messes up TwinCAT. everywhere. And what I do is, for this setting is the same. You go to the PLC projects, properties, advanced, and then you have write product version in files. So this is another one, just like the previous setting, that this is not a setting that is set on your development machine, but this is a setting that's actually saved in the project. So you only need to do this once. And what's better with this setting, what's so wonderful with this, is that if you change this, then TwinCAT will automatically open all POUs and remove this information automatically. So if I do this, then it's gonna even tell me, do you want to remove the product version from all files? Yes, please. So we do that, we save, and then when we look at version control now, then gone, completely gone. TwinCAT deleted it from main and TwinCAT deleted it from FB test. So that's what we want to have. So that's it. I just want to end with saying that I hope Beckhoff will actually make all of these settings, well, all of them except maybe the end of line markers, as the default in TwinCAT, because for the reasons that I just mentioned, they should be the default. And yeah, maybe Beckhoff could include this as the default settings in TwinCAT 4026, but I don't see any reason why this shouldn't be the default settings from now and onward. I mean, I can understand that it was like this before, because most people didn't use version control. I know still a lot of people still don't use version control. They should watch my video. I'll create a link up there to the version control course I have here on YouTube. Everyone should use version control. So nowadays, you know, there's no reason to not have these as the default settings. Are there any settings that you apply in TwinCAT that I haven't covered here? Is there any other thing in TwinCAT, any settings, any configurations, anything you do in TwinCAT in every project or in every new development computer? If you have anything like that, please write a comment in the comment section below, because I would be very curious, and I'm sure all my other viewers would be curious of that as well. Thank you very much for watching this video. I want to give a big shout out for my YouTube members and all my patrons for supporting this channel, making videos like this possible. If you like my channel, please consider becoming a YouTube member or Patreon. You have links in the video description below. Until next time, happy coding!